For years, Skinwalker Ranch has built its reputation on a pattern that is almost more unsettling than any single anomaly. Every time the team believes they are close to something concrete, the environment shifts, instruments behave erratically, signals distort, and the moment collapses before it can become proof. That pattern is what makes this episode different, because this time the obstruction was not theoretical. It was physical. Hidden beneath the ground was a tunnel the team had been trying to access for years, and every failed attempt had only made one question more disturbing. Was the ranch simply hiding something underground, or was it resisting discovery in a way no one could comfortably explain? What makes that question so powerful is not just the location itself. It is the history surrounding it. By the time this episode begins, the tunnel is no longer just another point of interest on a map. It has become a pressure point in the entire investigation. A place associated with delays, technical problems, unexplained interference, and a repeated inability to reach something that should, at least in theory, be reachable. And when a scientific team begins treating access itself as an event, rather than a routine step in an experiment, the story changes. It stops being about what they might find down there. It becomes about why it has been so difficult to get there at all. That is the tension hanging over everything in this episode. Not just curiosity, but accumulated psychological weight. The sense that the closer they get to the underground structure, the stranger the environment becomes. The kind of tension that makes ordinary dirt, stone, and empty space feel loaded with intent. And if the team finally succeeded in breaking into that hidden tunnel after years of failed attempts, then the real story is not simply that they got inside. The real story is what changed, what allowed it to happen now, and whether the breakthrough actually answered anything or only exposed a larger system of unanswered questions. At the center of that tension is the basic fact that hidden spaces on this ranch are never treated as just hidden spaces. A tunnel is not merely a tunnel here. It is interpreted through years of electromagnetic disturbance, thermal anomalies, unexplained aerial events, and repeated baseline deviations that have made the property one of the most controversial investigation sites in modern television. In any other setting, underground access would suggest geology, erosion, construction, or some forgotten man-made feature. On Skinwalker Ranch, it immediately becomes something more layered. It becomes a possible intersection point, a place where physical structure and unexplained response might overlap. And that is why the tunnel matters so much to the larger mythology of the ranch, because buried architecture, whether natural or artificial, implies intention. It implies concealment, function, history. Something was there, or is there, and the mere existence of a passage beneath the surface invites a whole new category of questions. Was it built? Was it formed? Was it modified? Was it connected to prior activity? No one fully understands. More importantly, if the ranch has consistently produced strange sensor irregularities above ground, what happens when the investigation finally pushes into a space below it? That is the psychological leap this episode asks the viewer to take. Not upward into the sky, where anomalies vanish into distance, but downward into a confined area where something might finally hold still long enough to be studied. But obsession does not form around curiosity alone. It forms around repeated denial. The reason this tunnel became one of the ranch's most forbidden questions is because access itself began to feel symbolically important. Failed attempts gave the location a reputation. Each delay turned a simple excavation problem into a narrative center of gravity. Every obstruction made the team return with more caution, more equipment, more intention. And when a place consistently turns ordinary operations into difficult ones, people begin to attach meaning to the resistance, not because they want to believe in mystery, but because the pattern keeps repeating in front of them. Brandon Fugal understands that pattern better than anyone. because he is not just an observer of the investigation. He is the figure who has invested enormous resources into trying to convert rumor, folklore, and televised speculation into documented evidence. That position comes with a unique kind of pressure. On one side is belief in the value of the investigation. On the other is the constant risk that the most dramatic mysteries at the ranch will remain emotionally compelling but scientifically unresolved. For Brandon, the tunnel is not just another site operation, it is a credibility test, a moment where years of patience, funding, and institutional commitment might finally produce something measurable. That is what makes his role in this episode so significant. Brandon Fugal is often presented as calm, composed, and willing to take long-range risks. But beneath that composure is a deeper wager. If the tunnel yields nothing, then years of build-up start to look like amplification without outcome. If the tunnel reveals something substantial, then the entire investigation gains a new level of weight. It would suggest that beneath the ranch's most visible anomalies, there may be a physical layer no one has adequately accounted for. That is a dangerous possibility in the best sense of the word. Dangerous to assumptions, dangerous to skepticism, dangerous even to those who want certainty, because certainty may be the one thing the ranch has never offered. And yet Brandon's gamble is not reckless, it is structured. He does not fund dramatic gestures for their own sake, he funds procedures, teams, instrumentation, repeated attempts, and controlled documentation. That matters, because it reframes the underground breach not as treasure hunting or thrill-seeking, but as an attempt to bring discipline into a space defined by ambiguity. The money behind the operation is really buying time, method, and persistence. It is buying the right to keep asking a question after easier questions have already failed. And in this episode, that persistence finally reaches the point where the ground gives way. Opposite Brandon's strategic commitment is Dr. Travis Taylor, the episode's most essential stabilizing force. Travis is the scientific translator of the ranch's chaos. He represents the effort to impose measurable order on an environment that appears to violate expectation at the exact moment expectation becomes most useful. That is not simply a personality function. It is the structural backbone of the show. Without Travis, the anomalies remain emotional experiences. With Travis, they become data problems, sensor readings, calibration issues, signal fluctuation, triangulation data, atmospheric inconsistencies, electromagnetic disturbance. The language changes, and with it, the stakes. What makes Travis so compelling in this setting is that he does not operate from blind certainty. He operates from tension between what should happen and what repeatedly does not. That tension is on full display in an episode centered on a hidden tunnel. Because a tunnel is, in one sense, an engineering problem. You locate it, assess the material, establish access, measure the risk, and proceed. But the ranch has a history of turning engineering problems into layered disruptions. Devices fail, communication becomes unstable, expected baselines drift. Human reactions become part of the evidence. Travis is forced, once again, into the uncomfortable role of scientist working inside a system that resists clean scientific sequencing. That is where the episode becomes more than a simple breakthrough narrative. It becomes a study in how rational procedure behaves when the environment itself keeps introducing friction. Travis is not there to dramatize uncertainty. He is there to contain it, to reduce speculation, protect the chain of observation, and identify whether what the team experiences is environmental, instrumental, psychological, or genuinely unexplained. In an ordinary field investigation, that framework would be enough. On Skinwalker Ranch, it often is not. And that is precisely why moments like this matter so much. Because when a controlled effort does succeed, however briefly, It creates a rare opportunity to compare expectation with outcome in real time. But no success exists here without the shadow of previous failure. And one of the most effective dimensions of this episode is the way it allows those failed attempts to linger in the background as more than mere setup. They form a pattern, a memory, a pressure archive. Every earlier effort to reach the tunnel left behind more than frustration. It left behind a sense that the location had become operationally unstable. That instability made the site ominous long before anyone entered it. The tunnel had already become important because it had already refused to behave like an ordinary target. That matters because failure, when repeated enough times, begins to shape interpretation. If equipment malfunctions once, it is an inconvenience. If access is delayed once, it is logistics. But when obstruction becomes part of the identity of the site, the team begins to carry those past interruptions into every new attempt. They prepare differently. They watch each instrument more closely. They monitor each delay with more suspicion. The past starts influencing the present before the current operation even begins. In that sense, every failed attempt is still present during the breakthrough. The team is not just confronting rock and soil. They are confronting accumulated expectation. And that accumulated expectation makes the eventual breach feel less like a simple achievement and more like a threshold event. Because when you finally gain access to a place that has been resisting entry for years, the emotional atmosphere changes instantly. Anticipation gives way to confrontation. The question is no longer whether the tunnel exists, but what the team is now committed to learning from it. And in a place like Skinwalker Ranch, access is rarely relief. Access is escalation. It is the moment when speculation is replaced by contact, and contact brings its own set of consequences. The breach itself carries a specific kind of suspense because it collapses two timelines into one. The long timeline of years of failed attempts and the immediate timeline of the present moment, where every sound, reading, and reaction suddenly matters. Once the team finally breaks through, the emotional energy in the episode narrows. There is less room for broad theory and more attention on fine detail. Air movement, interior conditions, sensor behavior, structural appearance, team silence. The smallest observations begin to feel unusually important because they occur right at the edge between expectation and discovery. That is also where the episode becomes visually powerful. A hidden opening beneath the earth naturally changes the grammar of the investigation. The visual language shifts from open land and distant sky to confined spaces, narrow access, hard edges, shadow, obstruction, and layered texture. Monitoring stations and drone perspectives give way to close-quarter observation. The environment becomes more intimate and, because of that, more psychologically intense. What was once a mystery spread across an entire ranch is now condensed into a specific opening in the ground. That compression amplifies everything. It focuses attention, it reduces escape routes for interpretation, and it forces the question the audience has been waiting for. Now that they are in, what exactly are they seeing? Yet the power of this moment comes from the fact that entry does not instantly produce clarity. In fact, it often does the opposite. What the cameras capture may be real, documentable, and immediate, but that does not mean it is self-explanatory. This is one of the core strengths of the episode. It does not pretend that physical access automatically resolves ambiguity. The team can see more, measure more, and record more, but increased visibility does not always equal increased understanding. Sometimes it simply reveals that the thing you have reached is stranger, more incomplete, or more resistant to interpretation than you expected. That gap between observation and explanation is where Skinwalker Ranch is most effective as a documentary experience. The cameras catch surfaces, movement, openings, structure, and reaction. Instruments register conditions, variations, maybe even sensor irregularities or unexpected response patterns. But what the ranch refuses to provide is immediate coherence. Evidence appears, but meaning remains unstable. And that instability is not a weakness in the storytelling. It is the storytelling, because the most compelling investigative narratives are not built on instant answers. They are built on the discomfort that comes when evidence arrives before interpretation is ready to contain it. You can see that discomfort in the way the team responds. Not with theatrical shock, but with the more convincing restraint of people trying to stay disciplined while realizing the moment may be more significant than it first appeared. That human temperature matters. In high-pressure investigations, the most revealing details are often behavioral. A pause before speaking, a change in tone, a recalibration of language, the decision to slow down instead of rushing forward. These are not dramatic flourishes. They are signals, signs that the people closest to the event understand its weight even before they can define it. Brandon's presence in a moment like this carries one kind of tension. He has invested in the search, but he also knows that any discovery must survive scrutiny beyond the show itself. Travis carries another. He has to evaluate what is happening without letting the environment dictate the interpretation. Together, they represent two forms of discipline under pressure: strategic patience and scientific restraint. And when both of those are visible in the same scene, the viewer understands something important. The tunnel is no longer just a narrative device. It has become an event serious enough to alter behavior. That behavioral shift opens a deeper question. What if the most important thing revealed by the breach is not simply the physical tunnel, but the way it interacts with the broader logic of the ranch? Because the episode quietly suggests that this underground structure may not be an isolated curiosity. It may be a node, a trigger point, a missing physical reference in a landscape already defined by unexplained aerial sightings, thermal anomaly clusters, magnetic irregularities, and inconsistent instrumentation. If that possibility is even partly true, then the tunnel matters, far beyond its immediate dimensions. This is where the episode begins to widen its own frame. Instead of treating the breach as a conclusion, it starts to imply connection. A hidden underground feature may help reorganize how earlier anomalies are understood, why certain regions repeatedly produce unusual readings, why some experiments encounter interference at critical moments, why the ranch seems to create patterns of concentration around very specific locations. None of that becomes a definitive answer here, and it should not. But the possibility of connection is enough to change the tone of the investigation. Because once a physical structure enters the picture, speculation becomes anchored to something material. Material anchors are rare on this ranch. That is why they are so valuable. A signal in the sky can disappear. A flash can be disputed. A reading can be challenged. But a hidden tunnel beneath the surface introduces a new category of evidence. It can be revisited, measured, mapped, compared, studied over time. Even if it does not explain the ranch, it creates a stable point around which future experiments can be organized. That alone makes the breakthrough consequential. It turns an atmosphere of scattered anomaly into a more focused inquiry, not simpler, but more structured. And structure, in an investigation like this, is everything. Because the deeper mystery of Skinwalker Ranch has never just been whether strange things happen there. It is whether those events form a system, whether the disturbances, fluctuations, and anomalies are isolated incidents or expressions of a larger pattern. The hidden tunnel intensifies that question because it introduces the possibility that the ranch's behavior may be spatially organized in ways the team has only begun to understand. The underground breach does not solve the puzzle, it changes the shape of the puzzle. That shift is what gives the episode its lingering force. By the time the immediate operation is over, the tunnel no longer feels like the final destination of a years-long effort. It feels like the first door in a deeper corridor. The surface barrier has been broken, but the conceptual barrier has only just been exposed. If there is something below that connects to what happens above, then the ranch may be operating through layers the investigation has barely touched. Geological layers, structural layers, informational layers, maybe even layers of causation the team is not yet equipped to isolate. And that is why the ending of this episode works best as escalation rather than closure. Because the most honest response to a breakthrough like this is not triumph, it is caution. The team got in, yes, but getting in is not the same as understanding. In many investigations, access is the hard part, and interpretation follows. Here, access may have been the easy part compared to what comes next. Now the team has to determine what the tunnel actually is, what its presence means, whether it relates to prior unexplained response patterns, and whether entering it alters the ranch's behavior in ways no one can yet predict. That unresolved quality is not frustrating. It is precisely what makes the story effective. A complete answer would shrink the mystery. This episode does the opposite. It makes the mystery more physical, more specific, and therefore more difficult to dismiss. There was always something compelling about the ranch as a site of strange reports and unstable readings. But a hidden underground passage changes the emotional geometry of the narrative. It gives the mystery mass, depth, consequence. Suddenly, the unknown is not just around the investigators, it is beneath them. And that image may be the most unsettling one the episode leaves behind. Not the idea of a single tunnel, but the suggestion that the ground itself may be holding part of the pattern the team has been chasing all along. That the years of failed attempts were not merely unfortunate setbacks, but warnings of how difficult it would be to move from anomaly to access. And now that access has happened, the investigation can no longer stay at the level of surface disturbance. It has to go lower, closer, more deliberately. So the real significance of this episode is not that a hidden tunnel was finally breached after years of failed attempts. It is that the breach transformed a long-running question into a living problem. A problem with implications that now spread backward and forward at the same time. Backward into every prior experiment that may need to be reconsidered in light of this underground discovery. And forward into every future operation that will now be shaped by the possibility that what lies beneath the ranch is not incidental, but central. That is the loop this episode leaves in the audience's mind. If the tunnel was so difficult to reach, what was causing the resistance? If the resistance was only mechanical, why did it build such a history of strange interference around it? If the tunnel is connected to the ranch's wider anomalies, how much of the story has been unfolding above a structure no one fully understood? And if this is only the first successful breach, then how much more remains hidden beyond the point where the team finally got in? Those are not small questions, and the episode wisely refuses to pretend they can be resolved in a single night. Instead, it leaves us with something more powerful than certainty. It leaves us with a shift in perspective. Skinwalker Ranch is no longer only a place where strange things happen in the open air. It is now, more than ever, a place where the most important part of the mystery may be buried. And once an investigation like this moves below the surface, there is no easy return to simpler explanations. Because now the ranch has done something rare. It has stopped withholding access and started withholding meaning. And in an investigation built on years of failed attempts, strange readings, and unanswered patterns, That may be the most revealing development yet. The barrier beneath the dirt is open. But what waits beyond that opening does not feel smaller now that it has been reached. It feels larger, more organized, more patient, as if the real mystery was never the tunnel itself, but why it took so long for anyone to stand at its edge, and what the ranch is prepared to reveal next, now that someone finally has.